This presentation will go over the PRECEDE-PROCEED model used for health education program planning. Let's begin with spelling out the acronym. PRECEDE stands for Predisposing, Reinforcing, and Enabling Causes in Educational and Environmental Diagnosis and Evaluation. PROCEED stands for Policy, Regulatory, and Organizational Constructs in Educational and Environmental Development. So let's start off with some background information. The PRECEDE-PROCEED model is a community-oriented model for creating successful community health promotion interventions. This model, which is currently the most used in health education, focuses on a thorough assessment of the needs of each situation and then prioritizes problems and possible responses at each phase. Precede phases, which consist of assessment processes, was developed in the 1970s. And was followed by Proceed, which was added in the 1980s. So we're going to talk about each phase in this model, starting with the Proceed phases. These phases are where we define, identify, and prioritize information we gather from the target population. So the first 5 phases, which are the assessment or diagnosing phases, are Phase 1, social diagnosis. Phase 2, epidemiological diagnosis. Phase 3, behavioral and environmental diagnosis. Phase 4, educational organizational. And Phase 5, administrative and policy diagnosis. Here's the diagram of the first 5 phases, and this diagram was taken from Lawrence Green, the developer of the PRECEDE-PROCEED model. In Phase 1, we want to define the quality of life of the priority population. We want to identify what diminishes their quality of life. And we can do this through census research, mortality and morbidity data, and environmental assessments. We want to ask the community what they want and need to improve their quality of life. And we can find these things out by going house to house, doing interviews, through focus groups, town hall meetings, etc. In the second phase, the epidemiological assessment phase, we want to identify the health problems or any other problems that influence the outcomes that the community are seeking. Epidemiological assessment is an analytical phase, so we're going to want to separate the health and environmental factors into separate categories and then prioritize them and address the problems that way. Some forms or areas that we can get epidemiological data include incidence rates, prevalence, fertility, mortality rates, and our end result are specific goals to improve health status. During our behavioral and environmental assessment, we want to identify the behaviors or lifestyles or the environmental factors that have to change in order for us to come upon our desired outcomes. These behaviors can be on the individual level, or they can be changes that need to happen on the level of those who control the resources. At the end of this phase, we want to be able to create objectives that reflect desired change of the individual or the organizational behavior. Continuing with Phase 3 assessment, we want to look at factors that we are able to change. We want to choose the ones that will provide the best possible outcomes. Using tools such as decision matrices can make objective decisions easier. So as you can see in this table below, we have on one side behaviors that are more changeable or less changeable, and then the importance of it to the community. And based on this, we can come up with a objective opinion or objective view of what the population needs and how easy it is for us to change the behavior. During the educational and ecological assessment phase, we want to determine the factors that support or serve as barriers to changing and sustaining the behavior or environmental factor associated with the problem. We also want to create learning and resource objectives. Learning objectives include things people will know, understand, or the attitudes toward the program, and resources are material support. What planners will need to provide the target group with. The behavioral determinants used are categorized into three separate groups: the predisposing factors, enabling factors, and reinforcing factors. Some examples, as you can see below, for predisposing factors include knowledge, attitudes, and beliefs. Enabling factors are those that impact the environmental and personal resources. And lastly, factors that are reinforcing, whether they be negative or positive. These include peers, friends, family, law enforcement, and so on. We can apply theory in this phase, as you can see below. Individual theories are used in predisposing factors, interpersonal level theories for enabling factors, and reinforcing factors use community level and system theories. In the administrative and policy analysis phase, we want to determine the availability of resources. This includes funding, staff, etc. We also want to figure out the nature and intensity of the program based on analysis of the previous phase. Then we want to select the best combination of methods and strategies we're going to use to implement the program or the intervention. This is the final stage in the PRECEDE section. For the most part, all of these steps require defining, identifying, and prioritizing factors that affect the population being assessed. Our final four stages are in PROCEED. Phase 6 is implementation. This is where we want to select strategies and activities and actually begin our program. In Phase 7, which is process evaluation, we want to document program feasibility. We're going to monitor whether intervention is going according to plan and adjust accordingly. In Phase 8, which is impact evaluation, we're going to assess the immediate effects of an intervention. And then later on down the line, we're going to do Phase 7, which is outcome evaluation. And these are the long-term program goals that we have created. We want to see if we have met those goals. This is the full diagram of the PRECEDE model. As indicated by the arrows, the PROCEED phases are used to evaluate the factors that we assessed in the first 5 phases, the PRECEDE phase.